Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Acclaimed folk artist Willie Nile performs live at the Hamilton in Washington, D.C. tomorrow night. We spoke in 2017 about his long career alongside Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Bono, and Ringo Starr. He also shared exclusive details about the night John Lennon was murdered. We're here with the one and only
Willie Nile, look out.
Who's coming to the Hamilton Live. Great venue. Thanks so much for coming in, Willie.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the show. That we played the Hamilton last year. It's a beautiful venue and great stage, and we rocked it up. It was a good time, and looking forward to do that again.
We were just talking before we got on here that venue every year does this thing called Grammys on the Hill, and there's a lot of representatives there. And you just mentioned you're going to meet with one of them while you're in town right now.
Congressman Joe Crowley is an old friend. When he was 19 years old, I was out with my first album touring, and I was at Queens College in New York City, and these two college kids climbed into my dressing room window to get a towel signed. And I was nice to them, thankfully. And why wouldn't I be? And he still has the towel to this day. So he's crazy, but he's a hardcore rock and roll fan, a really good guy. And we've been friends for some time. I sang at his birthday party, so I'm going to swing by the Capitol and say hello to Joe. I mean, it's funny saying that, but he's a really people are people.
While you're in D.C., you might as well, man.
He's a really good guy. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what will we be hearing at Hamilton? Is this your new Dylan album or what?
No, that's coming. Making a new album of Bob Dylan covers songs of Bob, and but I'll be playing some of the stuff at the Hamilton. I'm playing a couple of songs from that album, and we'll play songs from World War Willie and American Ride and some of the other albums that we've been putting out. Having a mighty fine fun time. I'll say that.
All those albums get super acclaimed, man. You always find them in top 10 lists at the end of the year from various magazines.
People have no taste. What are you going to do? That's just proof to me that people have no taste. What's that great Groucho Marx line? I don't want to be a member of I don't want to join any club that would have me as a member.
Yeah. Speaking of Groucho, before we dive in, your jacket you're wearing right now has Marx Brothers on the back.
Yeah.
Explain who made it.
I have a black. I'm small. I'm not a big fella. I'm a small guy. And it's hard to find jackets. So I was shopping with my girlfriend in New York City and found this black stretch jacket that fit. It's hard to find good stage jackets, and I said this could be great. And I said, but it's got nothing on it but black. And she said, well, I could cut up some T-shirts and sew them on. And so I've got like a half a dozen of these with different characters. This one has the Marx Brothers on the back. I've got one with Charlie Chaplin on the back, Lou Reed, John Lee Hooker. It's just fun. You make your own jackets.
So great. And you wear them on stage at Hamilton.
Yeah. These are my stage jackets. Yeah. I'll be prancing around mightily in some strange
So you got to come out to Hamilton to see which one he's wearing. Awesome. Take me more into the Dylan album, because that sounds awesome.
Last May, a year ago May, it was his 75th birthday, and in New York City is a venue called the City Winery, and there was a show going on there where they were going to honor Bob, and they called and asked me if I'd sing 4 songs of Bob's, and I said, well, let me give it a think, and I looked one night late through all of his songs. I thought, well, I'll only do them if I think I could have fun with it or bring something to it. And I found some, Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall and Rainy Day Women and a few others. And it was so much fun singing them live and kind of rocking them up a bit. And it just was a ball. And I mean, Bob's the Shakespeare of rock and roll. And I've met him a number of times, and I'm good buddies with his manager. And it's a great, those songs are so powerful. And so, I have grandchildren now, and if nothing else, a door for them to Bob's work. So we had a mighty time with the band. We had the drummer for the Spin Doctors, Aaron Comez, a great, also James Maddock, great guitar, singer-songwriter in New York, my bass player Johnny Paisano, and my lead guitar player Matt Hogan. But the record came out. We made it so quick, and the vocals are all live, my lead vocals. Bob's songs are great, so you start out with great material. That's you can screw it up, of course, but we didn't. We really had a ball with it.
Didn't you say there's a blowing in the wind like the Ramones?
I was sitting around one night with my guitar, and I thought, well, what could I do to this? And we rocked it up pretty good. It's kind of like I Want to Be Sedated meets Bob Dylan on a back street in the East Village. in the hot summer.
Now, you have plenty of experience in the East Village, the whole Greenwich folk scene coming up. Because explain to our listeners, you were born in Buffalo, right? Explain how you sort of made it from there all the way down to New York.
I was born in Buffalo, New York, and my grandfather was a vaudeville. He ran an orchestra for like 20 years in vaudeville, 7 nights a week. Played piano, did arrangements. And my father used to tell us all these stories about going to see the SEAL acts, the comedians, the films. And my grandfather could really play the piano. He used to put a white sheet over the piano and play the sheet.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Sheet music.
The original definition of sheet music. As a kid, as a little 3-4-year-old kid, that was something to see. So there's a lot of history of music in my family, but I was bitten by the rock and roll bug in the early days, from Elvis and Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and the Everly Brothers through the British invasion. That was really my prime. That really hit me, the Beatles, the Stones, Dylan, all that stuff. Grew up there, went to the University of Buffalo, and when I graduated, I moved to New York City, looking to try to make a living as a songwriter, making records. I had never played before on stage, but I had all these songs, and got to tour with The Who in the early 80s across the U.S. That was such a thrill. I'd heard from the record company that someone from the record company said, "Oh, Pete Townshend's a big fan of your record, my first record." And I just said, "Oh, that's nice." But I thought to myself, "Yeah, sure he is." And when we were playing in Los Angeles, we toured across the country. First time I ever toured with a band, 3 weeks in. And their management came to see me play. Freddie Mercury came out that night to see me play. And anyway,
wow.
So they asked us, yeah, it was crazy. And he said, "Do you want to open the tour?" Because they were just on tour. And they actually kicked some band that was opening off the tour, put me on it, and we toured across the U.S. with The Who. It was
what is this, like 1980-ish?
It was 1980.
Yeah.
And it was, I never even in my wildest dreams imagined anything like that. I'd seen them in Buffalo one time, earlier. And that was The Who, Pete Townsend, every night, Roger Daltrey. Entwistle was still alive at the time, and new drummer Kenny Jones at the time. What a blast! It was like living a dream. And the record company didn't want to support it. They said, "Oh no, you'll get booed off the stage," because they tried to talk me out of doing the tour. And they said, nobody wants to see an opening act with The Who, and I understand that. I said, "Yeah, that may be the case, boo or not. I can't turn this down."
You don't turn that down.
As a fan, I did it to see The Who play.
Yeah.
Close up.
What were they like backstage? I mean, we've all seen the music, but
they were so great. I mean, we had total access. We could go hang out in the dressing rooms. They couldn't have been nicer to us. The management on down, Pete, Roger, John, Kenny couldn't have been nicer. And they made us feel welcome. And every night was an arena, and the fans were wild.
Yeah.
I remember we were in Dallas. It was July 4th, and somebody shot a rocket across one end of some kind of a firework went flying while we're on stage. And I learned that after I was 3 weeks in playing ever with a rock and roll band on stage, because I had only played solo before that, acoustic. And here I am opening up for The Who. It was a riot. And I had, enough, let's say I had no brains. And so it was so much fun. And I learned how to talk to 20,000 people. Yeah. You just talk slow. And you say Roger Daltrey and Pete's name a few times, and you're good to go. It was so great. I actually played in November. Roger Daltrey did a cancer benefit in New York City on Wall Street. A lot of high rollers. And the guy putting it on is a big fan of a friend of mine, and he wanted me. He knew I knew Roger, and so he set it up that I got to play with Roger. We traded verses on "Substitute," "Won't Get Fooled Again," and "See Me, Feel Me," and it was like, still pinching myself. So I'm a pretty lucky guy.
So he liked you. Roger liked you enough to invite you back all these years later.
Oh yeah, I've stayed in touch with him. He came out to see me a few years back when I was in England. We've stayed in touch, and they're really good guys. It's surprising. You'd be surprised. I mean, I don't know everybody in the whole entertainment pantheon, but I know The Who. Springsteen's a good buddy. Mm-hmm. And when you're sitting with these people, their feet are on the ground. They've been through it. You can hang and have a drink with Bruce 2 a.m. and like talking to anybody, and yet it's Bruce Springsteen. And The Who, they're great. I've been very fortunate. Ringo even. I did a tour in, I think it was '92. Someone invited me to open up for Ringo. Somebody got sick, and they said, "Can you make it?" Sure, I can make it. Ringo Starr, hello. So we opened up in New York City, and they liked it. They liked it a lot, and they said, "Would you continue in the Northeast?" So we ended up doing the Northeast run of a tour with Ringo Starr and the All-Star Band. And the last night of the tour, we're in Saratoga, Performing Arts Center up in Saratoga, New York. And I'm on the side of the stage watching Ringo. And the last song of his set is Photograph. That's because all I've got is a photograph. And he comes off the stage, and he sees me about, 30, 40 feet away, and makes a point. He's got to do encores. He makes a point of coming beeline over to me because he knew it was my last night. Says, "Willie, I just want to say thank you." Shook my hand, gave me a big hug, and said, "You did a great job. Thank you." It was old school, rock and roll, and of him to do that. And when he hugged me, he was covered with sweat. And I thought, Beatles sweat. I'm covered in Beatles sweat.
Well, it must be wild because you mentioned that.
I haven't washed since, no.
You grew up watching them, and then all of a sudden you're playing with Ringo and getting sweat all over you.
Well, anyway, he said to me, "Do you want to come on and sing? I get by with a little help from my friends." And it was a great honor to do that. And it was, Nils Lofgren was on stage. Nils is a buddy. So I've been pretty blessed, when it comes to, there's something to be said for following your dreams. Mm-hmm. I'm still doing that, and it's not always easy, but these days it's rocking. I'm rolling. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That was awesome hearing about the Who and Ringo. Tell me, go more into the boss. You mentioned Bruce and how you could have a drink with him at 3 a.m., but man, he does those marathon shows like 4 hours, and I don't know how they still do it. Him and the E Street that's just endurance out and beyond.
It's beyond. I don't know how they do it. I'll do shows 2 hours and stuff, but every night 3:45, 4 hours, and he's not just whispering, acoustic folk songs.
Right.
He's rocking. I met Bruce in the early '90s, and I knew his wife Patty Scalfa from years earlier, playing in the Jersey Shore when she was singing background for Southside Johnny, and she said, "Oh, we love your new record." This is back then, we work out to it in the morning, which I couldn't believe it. I go, "Really?" Yeah. And so we met a couple days later, and we've been friends since. And he's just a decent guy, the kind of guy that when people always ask me, "What's Bruce like?" And I say, "You know what? If you knew him, day-to-day life, he's everything you'd hope he'd be. He's a regular guy. He's a good guy, with big dreams and a really big giving heart. I mean, you don't do those shows." He doesn't have to do any more shows. He doesn't have to, he does it because he loves the music. It means something to him, and he loves giving to the audience. The guy knows how to throw a party. Let's put it that way. But he's a really good guy. I've been, he's joined us on stage a number of times. There's a charity benefit we do up in Asbury Park every year, and he's joined us for a number of times with my band, and a number of times he's invited me to sing with him on stage. Shea Stadium twice, Giant Stadium in front of 70,000. And I come on stage, right? And when I was at Shea Stadium, 2003, I think it was, one of the Mets pitchers, Al Leiter, was about to go sing with them, and he was petrified. And I said, "Al, wait, you pitch a baseball like in a World Series over a little white object with 60,000 people screaming, bloody murder.
Hanging on your every pitch."
I said, you're going to go out there. I said, the E Street Band got it covered. It's easy. I've done it. Just go and have a good time.
They have lighters in their audience every night.
He went out there, and he was petrified.
Oh, man.
And when he walked off, he looked like a ghost. And they were I could see little Stephen was laughing because he was so scared. But it just goes to show, I mean, I couldn't pitch. None of us could do what he does. But the E Street Band got it covered. So when I walked out, Giant Stadium, Bruce invited me up to sing a few songs. 70,000 people going crazy. I mean, the noise level, it's like you're behind a jet airplane taking off. Yeah. And it's full of love. It's New Jersey, Giant Stadium. And I went up to sing a couple songs, and Bruce is very giving. We have a good time together, and he rocks. And so I was on stage standing next to him and kind of pushing him a little bit to the side. "Hey, Bruce, you rock." You're laughing. And then I left the stage after 2 songs, and I was in the back, and somebody says, "He's calling for you to come back on stage." He kept staying on stage. "Get Willie back out here." So I went back for a 3rd song, and we did another rocker. And it was one of those times, how Springsteen and the band go all to the front of the stage? They run up. Well, they did that, and I go, well, I guess I've got to go. So I went with them. So we're right near the front of the stage. Everybody's all crowded. And there's this woman looking up at me with the expression on her face like, who the hell is that? What are you doing up there? What are you doing up there? Yeah. I just looked at her and kind of shrugged, went, I don't know.
Is that Al Leiter?
It was, yeah, right. It's Al Leiter.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's so great. I love hearing that about Bruce because everyone that loves his music, it's so great to hear.
Anybody who cares, would like to know what he's like.
He's the genuine article.
Everything you hope he would be. No, he couldn't be more down to earth. He'll go to Jersey out for a drink, ride his motorcycle. We go out, just have a drink, hang with. People don't bother him. They don't. He's just tries to live as normal life as you can imagine, being someone of that, that iconic.
So
he's a great guy.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And then doubling back to Ringo for a second, and the Beatles. Did I read that you played in the same studio as Lennon the night he was killed? Yeah,
that's a whole other side. Yeah, I was in 1980. I was making my second album in December 5th of 1980.
Yeah.
I took my band in to make my second album for Arista Records, and it was a Friday night. We started our record, and John Lennon and Yoko were. I was in Studio A, one of the big rooms, and John was in the mix room upstairs with Yoko, working on a Yoko project. And my co-producer knew John, Tom Pernunzio. He knew John. He'd worked with him years past. And he said, you want to meet John? I says, yeah, absolutely. But let's wait a couple of days. Maybe we'll record something. Maybe we'll, play him something. Who knows? And we needed to get to recording. So this was Friday night. So we figured, all right, Tuesday night, we'll go see him. So Sunday night, the 6th of December, was it 6th? Yes, 6th, no, the 7th of December, midnight, we're in the studio recording, and the phone rings at midnight, and it's one of John's engineers, and they say that John is out of guitar strings. Do you have any guitar strings that he could use? And so we just looked at John Lennon, his guitar strings, so we go diving in our bags and pull out guitar strings. So I was going to put a note with the strings to John, thanks for the music, love you.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to meet him in a couple of days. I'll just tell, it's too corny, I'll tell him when I see him. So we sent the strings up about midnight, and we left that studio about 2 a.m. that night. The next day, Monday, December 8th, 1980, we came in about 4:30. I've got the call sheet for that day, with the schedule. And he was in at 7, we were in at 4:30. And the engineer said John played on those strings from midnight to about 4:30 in the morning on a song called Walking on Thin Ice. It's a great track, Yoko's song. And the guitar playing is just like so visceral, so raw and rocking, just it's the last thing he ever recorded. And so about 10:20 or 10:30 that night, we're in the studio recording, Monday night, December 8th, something like that, 20 after 10. The phone rings. Unbeknownst to me, Tom Pernunzio, the co-producer, had a buddy in New Jersey bugging him all week. Mm-hmm. Can you get me John's autograph? Can you get me John's? He was a collector. Mm-hmm. And we had done a favor the night before, so Tom called the engineers. I didn't know any of this till later. He called the engineers and said, the guy who gave John the strings would love an autograph. His name is Ken. Well, my name is Willie Nile, and John didn't know me, I don't think. But anyway, so the phone call was saying, John's coming down now. So Tom went, he just said, I'll be right back. So he left the room. We're listening back to a take that we had just done without Tom. And Tom comes in, he goes, somebody just shot John. And I said, well, John who? It didn't make any sense. What do you mean, John? Somebody shot John. John who? John Lennon. I go, what? And you figure, well, shot, what does that mean? Maybe in the hand, maybe in the foot. Sadly, it wasn't the case. And the phone started ringing off the hook. David Geffen called. The woman, the secretary answered the phone. He said, John's there, right? Some Yoko's friend just said he's on the way to the hospital. He'd been shot, but he's there recording, right? And she said, well, no, he left about 15 minutes ago.
Oh, my God.
It was so terrible, and we were all crying, and they announced that. So we watched TV like everybody else, and one of my heroes, John Lennon, and I'd give anything to go back in time and to know that and go upstairs and say, hey, and you know what? He had a bodyguard. The record plant hired a bodyguard. This story, people don't know this. Nobody knows this. there was a bodyguard that they hired to guard him whenever he was in the studio. His name was Bobby. Large, African-American, great guy, big guy, like 6'6", 300 pounds. And I would tease him. I would walk up to him with my fists up. Okay, let's do it. And I'm so small. It was, it was a good guy. So the next day, after John was killed, I was talking to Bobby, Bobby, what happened? And he said, he was telling us, he was just, tears in his eyes. He said, when we got in the elevator to leave, John was in the greatest mood. He said John was in absolute, because the press, Double Fantasy was number one, and it was the album that John made, with Yoko. They alternated songs. And Bobby said John he was so happy because Yoko was finally getting respect from the press. And that meant the world to him. And they got in the elevator, having just mixed this track, Walking on Thin Ice. It's a great track. It's just it's a searing, great track. And John said to Bobby, hey, because Bobby was going to take him home, and he says, Bobby, let's go to dinner, have dinner, let's celebrate. And Bobby said, I'm sick to my stomach, I don't feel good. And John put his arm around him and said, don't worry, you go home, go home, feel better, we'll do another night. So instead of Bobby getting in the car with them, going to the restaurant and then home, he'd have been with him, and he'd been watching out.
So people don't know this about him being sick to his stomach and all this?
No, he told me that the next day. I've never read that, never heard that. Wow. So had he gone with them, things maybe could have changed, and he felt really bad about it. I said, Bobby, what can you do?
Yeah.
We're not, can't see the future. Anyway, it was a very sad day, and
you gave him the strings to play on.
I gave him the strings to play on, but he gave me all those amazing songs and all those thrills and all that inspiration that got me interested in making music. So,
wow.
And that night, I played with Ringo in Saratoga. The song we sang was I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends, a song John wrote for Ringo. So when I was singing on stage that night, 12 years later, 1992, on mic with Nils Lofgren, I couldn't help but think back 12 years to because this was a John song, and I'll miss him all my life, as will most of us.
Oh my gosh, and
God bless John Lennon.
Absolutely,
God bless John Lennon.
And it's stories like that, which is why, I feel like you've been at all these different places in music history, and that's why they're making a documentary, right? Tell us about that.
I've been lucky, it's just, you never know. You do your best, and you just try to do the best work you can, treat people good, and my father's advice, do the best you can, treat people good, and leave the rest in God's hands. My dad's pretty devout, religious. And that's good advice, I've been lucky, I've worked hard, I never gave up, I persevered. There's a fella in Austria, a director, is making a documentary about me, and I said, well, why do you want to make a documentary about me, And he said, because your story's unique, you have more passion, you have the same passion or more now than when you first came to New York. I'm writing my best stuff, the albums I'm making now. Like I made World War Willie. The album I made came out last spring. It was voted best album of the year for Twangville magazine. It's on a bunch of top tens. And American Ride, 2 years ago, I put out. And that album won Independent Music Awards Best Rock Album of the Year.
Didn't Bono say really great things about American
I've been
Ride?
lucky. I can't be sitting bragging about myself.
Yeah.
Which proves that people have no taste, as I said earlier. That just proves to me that people have no taste whatsoever. But I'll give them their due. Bono gave me, I've gotten quotes. Lou Reed gave me a beautiful quote. Bono gave me a beautiful quote. He said, when I asked him for a quote for American Ride to help get the word out about the album, let's see, I'm going to try to remember what he said. He said that...
I have it if you need it.
You got it there? I forget what it is. What is it? I forget what he said.
He said, this is Bono saying, one of the great guides to unraveling the mystery that is the troubled beauty of America.
Yeah. God bless him.
That's poetic itself, but
when I saw that, I was sitting at my desk and I opened up an email and I see it's from Bono and I went, well, first of all, what? And I look at the quote, a great guide to unraveling the troubled beauty, that is America. The troubled beauty. Yeah, he's a poet.
Yeah,
and another good guy. He's nice to me. He takes a lot of heat because of all the work he does in Africa. But I'll tell you what. I'll tell people that I've met him a few times, and he's raised billions of dollars for AIDS and medicine and care, and if you save one life, that's worth it. Hey,
save the world entire.
Just save one life, and he's done more than that. And he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And he's a poet, too. He gave me a great quote.
Absolutely.
He's a piece of work, that guy.
Absolutely. But anyway, we were, sorry to tangent everybody, but we were talking about the filmmaker, the guy in Austria.
They're making a movie about me. I don't know when it'll come out, maybe next year or the year after, but he's been following me around with a camera over in Europe and in the States. He went to Buffalo and interviewed my father for a couple hours.
Wow.
My father's 99, and he's doing great. Lives alone, knocking on wood. I played golf with him last year.
That's so, he's still golfing at 99?
Well, I think it's done now, but he shot a 98 when he was 98. I know, exactly. He's a salt of the earth guy and a special man. I love him dearly. And so Lucas, the filmmaker, went to Buffalo and interviewed my dad. When we went back to Austria to show some clips of stuff he had filmed to some of his friends, they all said, "This guy's the star of the film, my dad." And I said, "There you go. Now
we found our angle.
now you got a movie there. There's a star for you." Anyway, yeah. So we're having some fun with it. It'll involve some social issues. When I was in D.C. 2 Augusts ago, Malala, the Nobel Prize winning the young girl who was shot in the head by the Taliban.
Yeah.
She was speaking at the museum about empowering women.
She's so inspirational. And that movie, if you guys have not seen that movie, that documentary, oh my gosh.
She's remarkable and so revered around the world as a spokesperson for girls and women and education and health and just uplifting girls and women. Anyway, a friend of mine at the Voice of America was sponsoring the event, and they wanted to use a song of mine called "This Is Our Time." And I said, I'd be honored, yeah. So I took the train down. I went to the event and met her father, mother, and her 2 brothers, and got a really sweet picture of her and I. And on the way back on the train, I wrote a song about, empowering women, and I'm recording it now.
What's it called?
I don't want to say.
Okay.
I'll have to kill you. But it's about empowering women, and she's very inspiring, and we'll have a piece of that in the movie because it's something that I believe in helping others, trying to spread a good word. Life is hard, even if everybody got along. If everybody was pals on the planet, if nations were all buddies, it would still be difficult. Yeah. Life is hard, and obviously people aren't buddies, And I like to address things as, well, look, let's say a little 7-year-old kid gets hit by a bike in a cul-de-sac, and Bill O'Reilly lives on one side, and Ken Oberman lives on the other side. Well, they probably run out to help the kid. I like to meet at that place.
Yeah.
Life is hard. So I'm going to have some things about social issues, empowering women and why hunger in the film and some of the Parkinson's work we're doing, just so that it's got some meat on its bones. But it's fun. If it inspires somebody, if it's good, then I'll be happy. If it's not, then I'll leave town.
Well, look for the Malala song in the documentary. What's the doc called? You mentioned outside there's a tagline, right? You mentioned a hilarious tagline.
Oh, the documentary, yeah. The movie's called One Guitar, the Willie Nile story. And when I was talking to to Lucas, when he came, he flew from Austria to meet me and try to convince me he wanted to do this movie. And I've said no a few times. People don't need to see my mug up there on the screen. And we were talking about it, and I was intrigued. And I told him a story. I'd been in Paris in 1980 doing interviews across Europe. My drummer and I, J.D. Doherty, basically drank our way across Europe doing interviews. No shows, just interviews. It was really interesting and fun. And so I'm in Paris at some 5-star restaurant, and and I'm quote unquote the next big thing.
Right.
I was way overhyped, and he says to me, "So Willie, how would you describe rock and roll?" And I just said without thinking, "Rock and roll is a Marx Brothers movie you can dance to." And
I love it.
And he goes, "Oui." And when I told Lucas that, he said, "Well, that's the tag for our film." And so he's a smart guy. He gets a lot of Lucas is a smart cat. So I'm excited about it. Could be good. Could be interesting.
A Marx Brothers movie you can dance to. That's rock and roll, baby.
That's rock and roll, baby. Yep.
That's so great. That's so great. That's awesome. Well, is there anything we're leaving out? I mean, otherwise, let's
just be good to each other, people. Do the best you can to be good to each other and enjoy good music and support it when you can. And we're coming to the Hamilton, and with my band, my rock and roll band, and this band, is one of the best bands in the world. I say that humbly. These guys are amazing. I put them up against any other band. We have so much fun, guaranteed. If you have socks when you're leaving the building, I'll give you your money back, meaning we'll knock your socks off. We have so much fun. People leave happier than when they came in, you know. So I love the venue. After sound check, I always take a walk to the White House, take a look, you know, and be good to each other, people, and go support the local music around you.
And wear 2 pairs of socks, because at least one of them's getting knocked off.
Yeah, take an extra pair of socks in your purse or your sport coat or your leather jacket, because you'll need it on the way out.
That's so great. Willie Nile, you can turn a phrase in an interview as well as a song. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. If people, willienile.com is where you can find more information about the music and stuff. But thank you for taking the time to have me here. You're a brave soul. I did my best to behave. Well,
it worked out. Yeah, you behaved.
I don't have.
You were pretty good.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Not too bad. I'll do better next time.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the D.C. area is great, and Podcast D.C. gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast D.C. is the new local app with hundreds of D.C. area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast D.C.